Hello, everyone. So today we're going to dive into the fundamentals of business to business or B2B marketing. So unlike B2C or business to consumer that focuses on individual consumers, the business to business marketing involves transactions between businesses. So an example of this is a steel manufacturer that sells to an automaker or a software company selling to a university. These types of sales typically involve longer cycles, there's more decision makers involved, and there's greater emphasis on relationship building. So our goal with this session is to understand how B2B buyers operate and how marketers can reach them effectively. So we're going to start out by exploring the four main B2B segments. The first one I want to touch on is manufacturers and service providers. These purchase raw materials to make products. So an example of this is Volkswagen is going to buy parts to build cars. The next one I want to touch on is resellers and wholesalers. Resellers, so wholesalers, retailers, they're going to buy goods so they can resell them without changing them. So if we think about the grocery store is going to buy the products so that they could sell them to the customers. Best Buy is going to buy those products from different manufacturers, different retailers so they can sell them to their customers. The next one here is institutions. So this could be schools or hospitals. And these could be them buying textbooks or medical supplies or cleaning services, things like that. And then the last one here is government entities. Government entities are major buyers. So the U.S. Department of Defense contracts with cybersecurity firms. So each of these segments here requires a different type of marketing approach based on whatever their unique goals are and their behaviors towards purchasing. So let's first start out about thinking about the B2B buying process. So it is typically a structured process, and it's very similar to, we talked in the last session about consumer behavior and that consumer buying process. The first step is need recognition, knowing that there is a problem, and whether that's internal or external to the organization, and that they need to do something about it. So an example here from our list is institutions, like if a school realizes it needs new computers. Okay, we have a problem we need to buy. The next step is product specification. So in this, the school might list out what are the requirements, like what are the size of the computers, what's the memory that we need, what's the price range that we have that we're dealing with. So we figure out what are all these requirements and specifications that we can outline. The next step is typically an RFP process, or request for proposal or request for presentation. You might hear it sometimes. And this is where the company sends out a request for proposals to vendors. And those vendors can come back and say, hey, I think you should buy my product. Here's the specifications. What questions do you have? Things like that. So a company may open up, here's a request for proposal, what we're trying to buy, and send us what you have so we can evaluate that. The next step is that the company selects a vendor. So they look through the proposals. They're evaluating probably not just on price, but also on support, reliability, other factors that are important to them. And they're also going to make sure that their there's specification to it. So the purchase is formalized. They have terms that are very clear for both parties and organized. And then there's going to be a vendor assessment. So this is after the delivery. The performance is going to be reviewed. They're going to use metrics like quality and timeliness and figure out, like, was this a good experience? Do we want to do this again? If we do want to do this again, would we change anything in what we do? If we don't want to do this again, why or why not? So all of this ensures consistency and quality in long-term vendor relationships. So also in B2B, buying decisions are really made by one person. And some of you who are working in organizations are probably shaking your head thinking, right? Yes, do you agree? Because there is so much that can be involved and it can be time consuming to make these decisions. So let's look at some of the people who are involved or could be involved in buying for an organization. And sometimes this depends too on the size of the organization. So if it's a significant size in an organization, then you're probably going to have a lot of these players. If it's a smaller organization, you may have one person that's taking up a majority of these roles. It's not necessarily going to be unique to different people in the organization, depending on the size. So let's start here on the left. So the initiator is the person who's going to spark the need. So this could be like if a doctor requests new imaging equipment. They're putting in and saying, hey, we need this, kind of raising that red flag to say this is a product or something that we need. They may not be saying specifically what that is, like I need an imaging equipment that is exactly this model, this make. Maybe they are recommending that, but basically saying this is what we need. Then if we move over to the right on this shape here, we have the influencer. So this could be a supplier that can share insights about what options there are. Then you have a decider. So this could be a hospital director making the final call. Then you have a buyer who handles the transaction details, processing all of that information. The user is the patient or the nurse actually using the equipment. And then the gatekeeper could be like an insurance company. So they might restrict or approve information that's going in and out. So marketers really need to understand and address each of these roles and know that these could be involved and that they could be multiple different people, multiple layers in the organization, or it could be just a few people or one or two people in the organization. So just like people, organizations have personalities or cultures that are going to influence how they buy. So let's talk about how some of these cultures may look. So on the screen here, you'll see 4 different types talked about at a very high level. So the first one at the top left is autocratic. This is where one person decides. It's typically quick, but it's limited in perspective. Whereas you could have on the right-hand side at the top here is democratic. And this is where the majority decides. It's good input, but it could be slower to try to gather up all of the insight and thoughts from a lot of different individuals. On the bottom left here, you'll see consultative, and this is where one person decides, but they may gather input, and it's a balance of efficiency and insight. And then on the bottom right here is consensus, and this is where everyone agrees. It's very thorough, but it's extremely time intensive, especially to get everybody to agree on the same thing. So that could or could not happen sometimes in organizations. But marketing strategies should really be adapted to match these decision-making styles. An example of this is LinkedIn articles or white papers can warm up cold leads in a consultative culture. So they provide that insight, they provide that input to help those decision makers. Next, let's talk about some common types of B2B buying. Some different situations. So you could have a new buy, and this would be a first-time purchase, like maybe a company's investing in new software, and it could be high risk and involves a lot of research to figure out what they want to get. Whereas a modified rebuy is going to be where they rebuy or they're going to buy the same type of product, but maybe they change something. So this could be like if they order the same laptops, but they have better processors in them. And then the last type here is a straight rebuy. A straight rebuy is like a routine purchase, like you're going to reorder office supplies. So if we think to the consumer behavior, we talked about buying milk, buying toothpaste, like those things that you just automatically do and renew. So a supermarket manager who tweaks the specs on a recurring dairy order would be a modify rebuy because they're making a tweak to that.